Welcome back, everyone, to G&S Inside Story. I'm Beth Smith, Vice President, and I'm excited today to connect once again with my colleague, Josh Laster, SVP of Client Service, to talk about the year ahead and the world we currently live in and its impact on communications in the advanced manufacturing and energy industries.
Hey, Beth.
Hey, Josh. So, we want to take this opportunity right today to talk about some of the recent global trends we're seeing across the board and offer some perspectives and insights for communicators. Josh, I know one thing we heard earlier this year from our CEO, Ann Green, was this major macro trends that we're anticipating for 2024, that they can really be summed up in this acronym that's becoming increasingly popular called VUCA. So this is being used to describe an environment characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And what we're seeing is that, this is now the convergence and interconnectedness of geopolitical, social, and technology trends all kind of in one. So VUCA is becoming this environment that we live in and the world in which we communicate in.
Yeah, and there's a ton of research on this topic that is bringing this all to the forefront. There was a recent study from Axios HQ and Mixing Board, which was based on an in-depth session with more than 90 top senior communicators across a variety of different industries, and there were 8 really interesting priorities that were identified as a result of that study. A couple of those stood out to us, and the first thing is it's an election year. And looking outside of just the boundaries of the US, there are nearly 2 billion people in more than 50 countries that are going to be voting this year. And in a lot of those elections, we're expecting fairly contentious results, right? So it's a very volatile geopolitical environment from that standpoint. Then you look at kind of this, what could be some impacts of that, a lower trust landscape across the board, from our news and social media environments in particular to even other forms of content and other kinds of forums for discussion, where it's even harder to tell truth from fiction in a lot of different settings. And what is the impact on our customers and our audiences as we think about our own impact on that communications landscape, and trying to create our own trust and authenticity with those audiences. So, that leads into another big trend this year, which everybody has been talking about: AI. There's been a ton of conversation from G&S on this topic, including a recent conversation from our colleagues, Sarah Pardis and Kyle Turner. They've talked a lot about this. Our CEO, Ann Green, has talked a lot about this with a number of different stakeholders. So we don't have to belabor it, but it is a really important issue that is adding some increasing complexity as it relates to misinformation, disinformation, and the role of communications in trying to, reach all of those stakeholders in a clear and very impactful way. And then finally, looking at the ESG landscape and all of the current challenges that come with communicating about sustainability, DE&I, and a lot of those other issues, which I know you have some thoughts on as well.
Yeah, there's been so much backlash. I think every communicator knows that those three little letters ESG have stirred up so much, especially over the past year. But I mean, the reality is this is really a rhetoric issue and not the corporate reality. Companies might be shifting away from talking about ESG, but they still care about it. They are talking about it more in terms of responsible business practices. And in particular, sustainability is still a big priority, especially as it relates to climate. We saw this coming out of COP28, and we're certainly seeing this with customer audiences in the advanced manufacturing space as well.
Absolutely. So putting yourself in the mind of your customer, that's a lot to sort through, right?
Yeah.
And with all of that inundating every piece of micro content they're
Yeah.
consuming every single day, it's no wonder that we're seeing this kind of great glaze taking place,
Yeah.
where our customers are viewing communications with even greater skepticism and putting up even greater hurdles to breaking through in a meaningful way. So all of that kind of table set, how do we communicate in a VUCA world, Beth?
I love that, the great glaze. It's so true. It's just like, where do I start? So, Josh, I think this is an answer that you and I can both tag team because there's a lot here. Like you said, we're polarized, living in a polarized world. We're being inundated. Everyone's more on edge. Everyone's skeptical. So there's a lot of things we need to consider in terms of communications this year. First of all, one thing, despite the fact that there's so much in terms of AI and machine learning, this year we need to be more human than ever to foster real connection and engagement. Humanity matters, people matter. we should really focus on making connections with them as both people and as a company. So we saw a study at the end of last year that spoke to saying that in 2024, employees are actually going to be even more powerful than brands themselves. And this can be seen in the fact that employees are connected to 10 times more people than brands are on social channels, for example. So their reach can really be far. And people enjoy working with people. And so, with that in mind, utilize and empower employees as ambassadors, even our customers and our experts to tell the stories through them and not just preach them from a company level. So that's one thing. Also, with everyone being so inundated and so skeptical, like I said, communications this year in particular need to be more clear, more credible, and more precise. So, really focusing more on the very specific solution and the value and the benefits and the goals versus just these sort of like lofty, big ideas. Going back to sustainability communications, this is especially important when it comes to areas like ESG and DE&I, especially. Something I've been talking a lot recently about with my clients is that when it comes to sustainability this year, we almost want to kind of like flip the script on storytelling. So, first, identify what are those stories that you have internally that are sustainability focused, where you've got a lot of data, where you've got credibility, where you've got people to talk about them, and building the story up around them, of course, as it's aligned with your business goals, but then also aligning that with the current trends, specifically as it relates to climate. Climate is very important this year. That's going to be important to making it not only credible and clear, but also timely, which is a massive example. So, I mentioned COP28 before. Well, coming out of that late last year, over 200 countries committed to reducing of fossil fuels. That would have been the time to tell those stories about how you're advancing, renewable energy, how you're maybe advancing the adoption of EVs. So again, credible, clear, and also timely.
Such great points, Beth, and I particularly love the point about pushing back against this incursion of AI and generative AI with increasing humanity in your own stories, and thinking about our own experiences as customers. Try having a chat with a bot if you need customer service, and we're seeing even more of this taking place across organizations. How frustrating it is to try to get through that phone tree when you call customer service line. Breaking through that with community and communication can be such a great way to create that impact. And I would add one additional challenge that I know we both see all the time. It's the ability to consistently create that cohesion as communicators across every aspect of your organization. I think right now it's really hard to develop trust with those audiences and tell authentic stories when the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And breaking down those silos is even more critical than ever in this kind of VUCA environment. It means operating as much as you can in an integrated way, from comms to digital, from product to corporate, from your sales organization to your agency partners. Everyone should know how they fit into the big picture and how they can amplify the work of the whole. And I would also say in a VUCA environment, responsiveness becomes even more critical. We talked about customer service. So many brands have gotten really good, in my opinion at least, at storytelling and building impactful integrated campaigns. Not to say some brands don't still have some work to do, but I think a lot have made a lot of progress and are doing really great work there. I think you and I do quite a bit of work in crisis and issues management, and one area where I continue to see vulnerability, particularly in advanced manufacturing and energy, is in how effectively organizations are preparing for and responding to issues in real time. Right? There are more platforms than ever where people are having these discussions around varying topics, sharing their opinions, and it becomes even more important to do true listening. Monitoring all of those platforms for the discussions, the opinions, the evolutions of these issues that we're tracking, and being willing to engage authentically in real time when it becomes appropriate for your brand. It's going to be more vital than ever. So it requires us to be nimble. It requires us to be humble, and I think prepared in a way that more static environments don't, if a static environment even exists anymore.
Yeah, those are some great points, Josh. And before we close up today, there's something I definitely want to touch on, because we can't forget about sort of the backbone of what we do, and that's media relations. We talked about the fact that there's so much more mistrust, especially when it comes to media, but this certainly does not mean that we just stop doing media relations this year. We just need to be more prepared. We need to continue to be very selective about what media outlets and what reporters we're targeting and have those stories backed by data. When it comes to advanced manufacturing and energy in particular, yes, it's still important to be part of the news media, but there's sort of almost an extra focus now on trade media because it's still being viewed as very credible and very business specific. And customer audiences are still going there for the latest information. So leveraging those relationships that we've built with trusted reporters in the trade space, especially to push through thought leadership content, is going to be so much more important. And in addition to that, now's a good time to start thinking about those owned channels and owned content where you can control the output of the message a bit more. Whether that's leveraging your company blog or creating, LinkedIn articles for a thought leader, creating an infographic so that you can kind of control that message and putting it on your company's website. And then even, considering paid media as well. Where can you create an op-ed and leverage paid media to place it where you want to see it so you can help kind of control some of the message in a year like this year. So these are all important things to keep in mind while we're looking at the media landscape and the current landscape in which we're operating in.
Yeah, and to tackle all of this when technology is advancing at such a rapid pace in a landscape driven by so much of this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, it's enough to make your head spin. So what can we do about it? And again, I think the takeaways here consistently tie back to doing some data-driven soul searching, for lack of a better term. What do we mean by that? In order to communicate effectively in this kind of VUCA environment, you have to know who you are. What kinds of stories are authentic to you? What are your values as an organization? Who are your customers? And what are the things that they care about and expect from you? And going beyond that surface level, you have to dig a little bit deeper. And, as we've seen, the issues landscape is shifting really dramatically, sometimes from one day to the next. That's going to increase throughout the course of this year. And it requires that level of foundational trust from your audiences to understand your commitments, your intent, and your willingness to learn and communicate transparently when necessary to address those dynamic shifts. It's clear that no one gets it right 100% of the time, but you have to put in the work and build those trust roots, let them grow deep into the soil so that the plant can flourish and, weather those inevitable stormy days. So as always, a lot to think about, but thanks, Beth, for such a great conversation, and thanks for watching.